welcome to the show.
Frank, thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here. I'm excited to talk about this.
It's kind of long overdue. I mean, we've talked about this maybe for a couple of years, and here we are. And I think it's pretty appropriate time as well. When I think about the CMO and I think about the role, for yourself in the organization, it's typical with marketing to talk about personas. And when I think of the CMOs that I know, they plus or minus work on a similar job, but they're all very, very different people, right?
Yeah. Well, it's true. And because every person comes from a different place, has had different experiences, and I think has different areas where they just gravitate to naturally. And so, yeah, I mean, everyone's different. That's the joy of working in this crazy tech and marketing world that we have.
No doubt. Well, I know that you're experienced, so you probably haven't been a CMO all of your career, but you've been a CMO for quite some time now. And so you've seen things change. And maybe you could juxtapose a little bit of how your role has changed maybe over the last 10 years, and then in particular over the last 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So 10 years in marketing is sort of like dog years, right? So things move fast. I also have always been in some form of technology marketing, which I think moves particularly fast. Now, the vast majority of that has been with B2B. So 10 years ago, I was in a marketing leadership role with a company called PS Print, which was part of the Deluxe Corp. So this was actually an e-commerce role with web to print. And that meant that our customers were mostly small businesses, graphic designers, small businesses looking to do business cards, brochures, that sort of thing, back in the days when we still used business cards. And that was actually my first vice president of marketing role. And it was a big step for me. I had spent most of my career in marketing, product management. But this is my first real full stack marketing role. And not only was it the first marketing role that I had, but it was more of a GM role actually. So I owned everything that was customer facing. So that included customer service, sales, design, e-commerce marketing, product marketing. And so for me, it was a big job, and one I was super excited to take on. And e-commerce was still, I would say it wasn't new, but it was still evolving rapidly. And so coming from, I had been in a fintech company before, to go to e-commerce was a pretty big shift for me. And the world was very different. Everything was in the process of moving to be more digital, but there was still a lot that was not. I mean, again, the basis of PS Print was paper goods. So business cards, brochures, postcards, and that was still a big market. And so I think juxtaposing that against where we are today, like I said, it's like dog years. It's like 70 years in terms of difference. And so
but you made this jump, right? So you talk about there was this inflection point where all of a sudden you became a CMO. What changed in your world? What caught you by surprise when they said, "Hey, Leslie, here you are. You're our new CMO," and you step into that role? Did nothing change, or did something become really apparent that something had changed?
Well, I wasn't a CMO there. My first CMO role was not a PS Print. So that was, my first CMO role was about 5 years ago when I went to work for Funbox. So that was my first CMO role. And actually, I think there's a pretty big difference between VP of marketing and CMO. And I didn't really recognize that at the time. It seemed like a pretty natural progression, but as I stepped into that role, getting back into fintech, and this would have been summer of 2019, I realized pretty quickly that not only was I the marketing functional leader, but also I was a leader in the company, which was a very different role, and one that required a lot more I would say collaboration across functions. Although, and I think this is what really helped me, that is part of my MO, has always been to build really strong relationships. So fortunately, this was like well within my wheelhouse, and I was really comfortable making these relationships work and having these really candid conversations and building trust. But that was really eye-opening for me.
How did that change in your view, how people looked at you? Like, were you treated differently by people inside the organization?
Mm, um, I guess so. I mean, as much as we would like to think that titles don't mean anything, there is a different perception when you have a C in front of your name, and right, like it's just like
Yes.
human nature, I think. And yeah, I think to some degree, coming in at a C-level role, I think it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because just having the C in front of your name brings some level of credibility. They're like, oh, well, this person must know what they're doing, right?
Correct.
But also, there's a lot of pressure then to prove, like, does this person know what they're doing? And so it's this very interesting dynamic. And of course, in this particular role, I had only about 6 or 7 months before COVID hit. And so, I was kind of growing into this role of CMO, understanding the dynamics of this new business, rebuilding the marketing team, and everything came to kind of a grinding halt,
That's right.
which was, really shocking, as we all remember. I still remember packing up my laptop. We had an office in San Francisco, and I still remember packing up my laptop and being, oh, I got to put my keyboard in. But I specifically remember I will be back in 2 weeks.
It was a hard stop.
But what I said, but the expectation was, don't worry, guys, we'll see you in 2 weeks. So like, don't worry about cleaning out your desk. Like, just take the stuff you need for a couple of weeks. And so, and Funbox is a company that is an online lender to small business. So pretty quickly, I am CMO of a company that has to make some pretty tough, pretty quick decisions about what we're doing with the business.
Yeah.
Because the economy came to a grinding halt. We, as a lender, could no longer be extending credit the way we had been. And all of our acquisition came to a grinding halt by design.
Correct.
We shut all of that down.